Hello, I'm live. I know we're early. It's 3 minutes away, but just wanted to make sure everything was set up okay. So hopefully you can all hear me. If you can't, let me know. And we'll get started in 2 minutes. And remember, type any comments as you go. But in 2 minutes, I'll officially join you. This is an unofficial joining. Just making sure we're set up fine. Hi, Leah. So just making sure you can see me fine, setup is okay, you can hear me fine. Let me know any technical difficulties occurring on the other end. I will, oh, good, we already got a love. Oh, I love the love. All right, I'm just making sure that also if I type something that it is received. Test. There we go. And anyone want to like my test, then again, I know that all is working as it should. One never knows. Oh, yes. Thank you for liking my glasses. Here's the thing. I prefer not to wear my glasses. We'll talk about this before we officially start. But the problem is, if I don't wear my glasses, I can't read any of your comments, which I'm hoping you're going to have, and you're going to have lots of questions. So that is why my glasses are on. So just keep that in mind. You know, I might take them off for effect. No, only kidding. All right. We have a minute to go. I'll have a sip of my coffee. Look at my coffee mug for those of you who joined early. It says, I am a nutritionist. What's your superpower? I'll probably show it again as we continue through our time together. Coffee's already a little cold, but that's besides the point. Also already have my water. Also important, always when talking, to have water nearby. Okay, it's 12 o'clock. Hello, Janice. All right, we're going to get started. I mean, not everybody's probably going to be here exactly on time, but for those that are, welcome, and I like your punctuality. Very important. All right, so I'm Keri Gans, for those of you who do not know me. And I am obviously a registered dietitian. I live here in New York City. And today I'm going to talk to you about my career. It's taken on many different steps along the way, and also from where I came from, meaning I didn't go to school to become a registered dietitian originally. I never thought I was going to be a registered dietitian. I never even heard what a registered dietitian was. So it's kind of interesting that now today I am working with a lot of brands, doing a lot of exciting stuff in the nutrition space, with never quite knowing that this was even an option and even a career choice. I was told by Leah to make sure I start with telling you my social media handles. So it is my name, which I suggest most people do, but it doesn't always work that way. So it's Keri Gans. That's on Twitter. It's on Instagram. My website is KeriGansNY and .com, obviously. And that's also my Facebook page. And most importantly, you should join the Keri Report, which I'll talk about as we chat together about how that came to be. All right, so let's back up a million years ago. I'm not going to tell you when because I don't want to age myself, that I went off to undergraduate school in Ohio. Went to school for communications, and then somehow, bored with that, I met a man, and I started dating him. He was a marketing major. Next thing I know, I too am a marketing major. So I graduate college, Ohio University, and I graduate with a marketing degree. So what does one do with that degree? I mean, again, we're going back years ago when, shockingly, there were actually typewriters. I know, that's shocking for many of you. So when there were typewriters, I actually became an administrative assistant at an ad agency. That was my first job. And needless to say, becoming an administrative assistant for the first job seemed great, but then I was bored out of my mind and I needed to do something else. So a lot of people I worked with actually said, Keri, you should go into sales. And I wound up switching careers totally and joined a company in the fashion industry in the sales area. Basically, the funny thing is, I was brought in to run a little showroom, and I had never done anything like that before. So basically, I did that for many years. So first career, salesperson, Garment Center. And you'll see that what I'm going to say as we go on, that a lot of what we learn, if you are a second career dietitian, a lot of that knowledge you take with you. Because I've never really lost the sales component. It's just that I'm selling a different product now. We'll get more to that. So I did sales, for those of you who don't know, for about 10 years in what we call the Garment Center. That's the lingo in New York City, the Garment Center. And at the time, I had a sales force throughout the country, better women's goods, traveling all the time, blah, blah, blah. And then I met my husband. He hates this story because he says this is not why I switched careers, even though it might have been. But I needed to all of a sudden do something different. I was working all the time. Oh, husband is now coming into the view of my Facebook. I don't think he meant to do that. He doesn't even realize what I was doing, and he just walked behind me. All right, ignore what's going on around me. Anyway, I ended up deciding I needed to work for myself and do something different. And I had a passion, always did, for nutrition, for health. So I decided, what could I do? Just like that, I was like, you know what? I'll become a nutritionist. And I thought that this way I could work for myself. Oh, honey, you got a hi husband. Anyway, so I thought I'll work for myself. And I will go become a nutritionist, and I'll eventually one day go into private practice. That was the original plan. The original plan was to apply to school, which I did, got into NYU. And, but you know, meanwhile, I'd really never even spoken to a nutritionist before. Well, I actually spoke to one, and it's kind of a funny story, but I won't bore you too long with it. But I called somebody about being a nutritionist, and she wasn't really nice to me on the phone. And I always wished I remembered her name, because I could say to her, you know, I still became a nutritionist. You weren't that nice. Anyway, so I ended up going to NYU. And then going straight on from my master's, because I had a business major. I had absolutely no background at all in nutrition. So it took a couple of years, and I went full time. Luckily, I was able to do that. We don't all have that ability, but that's what I chose to do. And I treated it at the time as if it was my other career. So went to school, got my master's, then applied to my internship. And here's something that not many people know about me. I got rejected. First internship, I got rejected. They had no placement for me. And if anything, I like to tell that because it's all about never giving up. One never knows. Just because I wasn't right at that moment for whoever, it didn't mean that I didn't have a road paved for me ahead that could be a pretty interesting career. Anyway, got a internship finally after sitting out for 6 months. Those were the days when it was only 6 months. And I went off. Oh, and then I got it at the Brooklyn VA. And the funny thing was, it was like, oh, it's not what I wanted. You know, again, one can never anticipate, but it's how you kind of go with these hiccups, like I like to say. I mean, the last place I wanted was to be way out in Brooklyn. It's far, not just cool Brooklyn, not Williamsburg, but it was far out Brooklyn. And anyway, Brooklyn VA, did my internship there. After that, I ended up wanting to be in clinical. That's what I knew. That's what I was comfortable with. And I was one of those rare dietitians that didn't hate clinical. For all of you RD to Bs, I mean, some of you might even be in your program right now. I actually did not mind clinical. I actually enjoyed clinical, but we'll get to why I left in a moment. So did clinical for 2 years. And the interesting thing about that is I thought in my mind, okay, start in clinical, build up rapport with doctors, and then eventually go into private practice because you built this amazing relationship with the doctors you worked with. And they will refer all their patients to you. Wrong. I wound up in the ICU. Tube feedings. TPN. I could never do it again, now in a million years. But I was lucky my patients lived, so they were definitely not referring to them to me afterwards. So there went that hopes. But I stayed in clinical for 2 years and eventually decided I was starting to grow my private practice on the side and decided to continue doing it. So I ended up joining insurance companies. I decided to be an insurance provider. And it's interesting because you hear two different schools of thought on that. Again, a lot of you starting out, there are those that will be like, no, insurance is a nightmare. Don't take insurance. I did. I took insurance, and that's how I built my practice till it was a very busy practice. And I really enjoyed it. I was working mostly with people for weight management. That's mostly what I did. Weight loss, dare I say that word. But yes, weight management is what I mostly did. And yeah, did that for many years. And along the way, I started becoming involved in the local dietetic association, Greater New York Dietetic Association here in New York City. And again, a lot of people have different paths. Mine was heavily involved with networking and volunteering. So I volunteered in my local dietetic association, and then from there, I ended up moving to state level, eventually becoming the New York State Dietetic Association president. And I love those years. I love those years of leadership. It was really great. And from there, I ended up along the way, I ended up through networking with other RDs, doing a little local TV show. And we're going back years ago, cable, just before we were doing everything online. This is how you're going to see how I've had to shift. And did a show called Diet Divas. And it was actually with Mae Musk, for those of you who know her, and Mary Jane DeTroyer. And so I started getting a little media now. For a while, it was the three of us, the Diet Divas. Then it went to just the two of us, me and Mary Jane, and then eventually it went to just me. And I did it for many years, and it was fun. It was live to tape. If you don't know what that means, meaning there really was no editing. We filmed it, then it was put on cable TV. And from that, and my volunteering as New York State Dietetic Association, I ended up saying, hey, I had two friends, Bonnie Tab-Dix and Elisa Zide, who were spokespeople for the academy. And I was like, well, that sounds cool. Let me do that. And I applied, and I was able to get a position. And I'll say that that was great. Being an academy spokesperson was really, for me, a way into this whole other world of what I am now doing. And paths have changed now. I mean, there's social media. There's a lot of different ways to enter. That was kind of my way, because that was the time where I was able to start connecting with all these editors for magazines and TV that I never knew before. And through that, and through the encouragement, believe it or not, of the editors, they used to say, okay, so do you want us to promote your book in your tagline? Like, you know, when they would ID me, and I'd be like, well, I don't have a book. And they'd be like, well, you should have a book. So a book was born. The Small Change Diet came to be. What I'm trying to point out is a lot of times we don't see things, but it's important to listen and hear. And I think a lot of what I did through talking to people and being open and listening, things evolved. So now I have a book, The Small Change Diet. I'm a spokesperson, and I decided to leave the program because I really want to go out there and promote my book. And promoting it meant that I would end up working with brands. And that's where it kind of began. So brands, nowadays, you don't necessarily have to have a book, but a book was kind of my segue into my next part of my business. And the more that I started working with brands and doing media work, the less time I had for my patients. And all of a sudden, patients started going down, and the spokesperson work started going up. I also, along the way, stopped taking insurance because I was like, I really don't have as much time. And, you know, sometimes I think maybe I should have kept insurance. I don't know. But I ended up then becoming a spokesperson. And one could even question, what does that mean? What does that mean? What do you do as a spokesperson? I mean, you know, or an influencer, because that's part of what I do. I always say I influence, I try to influence everyone around me, including husband who just walked by, but I don't do a very good job with that. But I try to influence the consumer and try to teach them about healthy eating. And so brands basically have approached me. And working with a brand can mean many different things. Oh, let me just say one thing. brands might approach you, but the brands that have approached me, it's very important that I'm in line with them. And what I mean is I've had, for example, I've had brands that represent like protein powders come to me and want to work with me. Well, one, I don't work with athletes, and I think that's more better suited. I don't really recommend protein powders. It's not that I'm opposed to them at all. I think there's a place, but it never really worked with them even in my private practice. So I never thought it was a good fit. So it was always about, for me, what would be a good fit? What would be organic for me to talk about? Basically then, the brands that I've worked with, I mean, if you look on my website, you can see there's a whole slew of them. And some brands that people will find, oh, that's a little controversial. And I'll be like, yes, but based on my whole mantra, the small change diet and all foods fit, I'm pretty open to realizing that the consumer needs to be met halfway a lot of times. So, spokesperson. And what does that mean? Let me try to zero in a little bit more on that. It means that when brands come to work with me, maybe it's social media. I mean, that is a big part of it. Posting on Instagram, Twitter. Oh, I miss the days when Twitter was #1. I now know that Instagram is up there, but I do miss the Twitter #1 days. Twitter's still there, though, for those of you who don't believe it is. And it's also never too late to get onto social if you're not. You know how so many people say to me, I am not on social, it's too late to start. And, oh, Bonnie just joined and she missed that I mentioned her. Hi, Bon. Anyway, so basically, where was I? I got sidetracked. Oh, what I do as a spokesperson. So it's a lot of different things. It might be the social aspect, which I mentioned, which I'm not a huge fan of, but brands want it nonetheless. And it might be also doing what's called satellite media tours, SMTs. That's where they're so cool. They're like when you're in a room, usually kind of freezing, at least for me. They have to bring a blanket sometimes in between takes because I'm so cold. And it is where you could do 18 interviews in a row. They just come in, it's all remote, and it's very cool. I might do those for a brand. I might do what's called desk sides for a brand, where those are becoming less and less. We actually go to the magazine's offices and you sit with the editors, and desk side, you talk to them about whatever brand you're representing. It also could be about doing tips that might go on their website or a blog post, which then brings me to the Keri Report. So the more I started doing spokesperson work, the more that I had to continue to evolve, because it's getting harder today. It used to be you do an interview with any media outlet if you want to recommend a brand that you work with, and legitimately I would mention them because, hey, I was recommending them because I felt in line with the brand, but nonetheless, they wouldn't want you to mention them. So it got harder and harder. It still is. So I decide, well, what do I have control over? Where can I mention brands? I decide to start my own newsletter, which is called the Keri Report. So it's a newsletter / blog in that it goes out to my subscribers, and then it also gets posted on my website. So take a look, see what it is. But I did that because of the change of the nature of the business. I mean, along the way, that's the thing. I've had to switch gears. I've had to say, all right, let me embrace social media, even though I really don't love it, because otherwise I would have been left behind. Let me do a newsletter because it seems to be what people are looking for. Brands, clients that I work with. I didn't want to be left behind. And I think that's the thing to remember as you continue on your journey and what you do, is that you have to be open sometimes to switching, because the more that we stay stagnant, we might be left behind. So as much as certain things I'd be like, oh, now I have to do this. Yes, if I want to do something else. And also with brands, I might do events. That's usually a lot of fun. It's usually a media event. It might be for other RD influencers. There's a lot of us here in New York City. Or it might be for editors of magazines that are covering nutrition and food, those that are interviewing me. I happen to say those are one of my favorite things to do, are events. And then the other thing is what people don't realize when you work with brands is you hope that they'll actually listen to you. So you actually have an opportunity to do consulting work. And I do that with a lot of brands where, we create messaging that they might want, but it's not their words. It's I have to help discuss with them and try to sway them. Well, hopefully not really have to looking like I'm pushing them, but it's a joint action that we collaborate. And it's about the ultimate goal of making the consumer healthier. And I think that's part of what the drive is. I mean, if I look at the passion when I started, if I go way back and how it all began, part of it was that passion. And I know it sounds corny, but here I was eating healthy and I was like, why not share this with others? And I know that some people are like, oh yeah, sure. But no, it was true. It definitely was true. And so today, here I am. So I'm doing the brand spokeswork and I'm still seeing a little bit of patience. I felt I should never give them up totally. And the reason for that is they keep me grounded. They keep me real. I hear their questions. And I think that that's important, that as a dietitian, that we are constantly listening. I mean, I actually wrote this down. Lessons learned. What have I learned along the way? I learned to listen. It's very important to listen. It's very important to network. I'll say that over and over again, networking, networking, networking. It's important to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask questions of your peers. Ask questions of those, like if you are in clinical work, those who are above you. Join DPGs. I mean, it's a great place to ask questions because especially once you work on your own, I don't know everything. I mean, I'm sitting here, my computer. I mean, it's you need to ask and not be afraid to ask questions. And you need to be you. One of the most important things comes back to just because somebody else is doing something else, we can't compare. It's easy to get caught up in that. It's so easy to get caught up in that, comparing ourselves to others. But ultimately, it's being you. And persevere. So if first you don't succeed, try again. Hey, I didn't get into my first internship. I didn't even get into Syracuse University, by the way, for communications. That's a whole nother story. But guess what? Many years later, they invited me to speak. I opened up my talk at the lecture and I was like, just want to let you all know that this school did not get me in. I mean, I was rejected from communications. Could have gone in liberal arts, but I didn't want that. I was rejected from communication. So you never know. I wound up speaking to them. You just never know what could happen. So it's the persevere. And then it comes back to full circle, network, network, network. The other thing I think that is important is, as I said, you don't want to get left behind. Things keep changing. And whether that be, not everyone has to do spokesperson work. I mean, not changing. And if you're doing clinical work, if you're doing private patient work, there's always something new that you could maybe be including in to your practice and to your brand, which is you. So what I did recently, about 2 years ago, I was like, what else could I bring to the table? So many RDs were bringing their fancy recipes and amazing cooking. Hey, I do cook. I don't only go out to eat. I do cook, but it's not my passion. So what else could I bring in that would be my passion? And that was to be a yoga teacher. So yeah, I also became a yoga teacher because I felt that here I was posting about it. I was telling my patients to do it. And now I offer as part of my brand. So a lot of other brands that I've worked with, they've said, hey, we really like that component. It's lifestyle. It's not just nutrition. It's wellness. It's the whole being. And I think that we can get stuck in looking at one box. I'm in the nutrition world and stay there. Well, isn't the nutrition world the health and wellness world? So what else could we do in that health and wellness world? It might be for some of you cooking. I mean, I hate that some RDs don't even know how to cook. It's a whole nother story for another time. But a lot of us are not passionate about it. More passionate about sitting and having a cocktail. But anyway, yeah, the important thing is knowing your passions and following them and getting those passions to actually be able to work for you. And I think that's what happened for me. It's following different passions, getting to where I am now and getting to talk to you. So remember, if you have any questions, I've been seeing some great comments coming through. I love it. If there are any questions, go ahead and ask away, because we're here for 5 more minutes. I could keep going about what I've done, but I don't want to miss this opportunity to listen to what you want to know more about, which part of my career. And I think that, as I said, we've all had different paths. and different paths on how we've gotten here. And there is no one path. There is no one road. And you never have to even, so there's no one road, and no one says you have to stay on that one road. And I do love some of the comments that have come through. Other people have gotten rejected from colleges. Yay. We never know. Rejection, by the way, is important, because if we are rejected, it is more fuel to have us pursue better. And that's what I kind of said. You know, rejection is part of it. We're not all meant to be great right out of the box. Oh, question. Have I taken any courses that I feel have helped me recently? I really haven't. Confession, I think courses are great. What I do is I do try to stay up on things, not necessarily through a course. So I haven't taken any courses, but I just went to an event here in New York City, Future of Food, because I wanted to hear about sustainability. I wanted to hear about things that are happening around me that I might not be as familiar with. So as much as I might not have taken ever any continuing ed, I mean, other than obviously going to Fancy, I do that, going to lectures that are given. But I think that sometimes it's good to seek out what we feel we might not really know. And I think one of the biggest things that I'm falling short of right now is this whole sustainability issue. And I want to know more about it. I want to be able to have an intelligent conversation. And maybe part of that is also, as things change, our lives change. Keep that in mind. What about when we change, we have different interests, and that's okay. Oh, another question. What food fads that making you a little crazy right now, or one that you're hearing from your clients? Well, where do we begin? How much time? Oh, do we have another hour? No. Anyway, keto does drive me crazy, and I know that some will argue there's some actual research where keto can benefit some individuals, but I'd say as a whole, I mean, I just don't understand why somebody really wants to make their eating so difficult. And I think that's my pet peeve with fad diets. I really come from the mindset of all foods fit. And when I hear people eliminating, it really drives me insane. I mean, I actually just went to another conference that I thought was important, Expo East. It's the Natural Products Expo. And it was annoying to see, so here we're like these natural foods, and that's great, but then they're putting it's keto friendly all over the labeling. And I get it, they want to sell, it's a niche now for the consumer, but it really drives me crazy. Another comment I think is important. Oh, important to listen and be willing to change your direction if something seems more attractive to you. Yes, thank you, Bonnie. That is true. We need to listen and be willing to change. And I think that's sort of what I was kind of getting at along the way of what I did, was kind of switch up things and say, I always thought I was going to do this. I thought it was going to be a private practice. I thought that's what was going to make me happy, but it didn't, I guess. Other opportunities came up and I listened and I followed those, and I'm loving what I do. And I think that that's important, that we really find a way to enjoy what we're doing. I mean, amongst the craziness that's out there. So the craziness of this one, that one, everybody's an expert. Everybody's a nutrition expert, which brings back to that whole keto diet or paleo. Or I mean, there's just so many. We could go on, and it's like I said, that's a whole nother video chatting together about all these crazy diets. And I think what's important, though, as a practitioner, is that you listen, though. Very important. As much as I'm saying, oh, you know, I'm poo-pooing them. No. I would first have to listen to a consumer sitting with me and figure out why they're doing it. What is their reason? And that's important for us too. As practitioners, as spokespeople, as people who post on social media, as dietitians, as the nutrition expert, it's important that we listen and understand and don't judge. Don't judge others, don't judge each other. We're all coming from different places, and we need to understand what the modus operandi is for somebody. Do I work with nutrition? Do I work with dietetic interns? I have a couple of amazing interns that have gone out to do wonderful things. Actually, one of my interns, when I was building my private practice, actually worked for me for a while. But right now, since I kind of scaled down that part of my business, she doesn't. But I do take dietitians. The thing that's hard working with me when you're an intern is that no day of mine is ever the same. Every day is different. And today, for example, taught a yoga class this morning. Now I'm chatting with all of you. Then I have a chat with one of my brands that I work with. Then I have a chat with another potential brand. Then I have a brand new client. So lots of, I still have to write the Keri report, all of that before the day is over. So I don't know when I'm fitting it all in, but it will be done. No day is the same. So with interns, I love them. But sometimes they have to understand that no day is the same. Let's see, we have 2 minutes, not that I'm watching the clock, but we have 2 minutes left in case that there's any other questions coming in. What I'd like to really leave you with is to return to those lessons learned. And I think it's important. And we're all gonna have different lessons, but the important thing is to learn from them. Is when I say we're all going to learn differently, but it's important to be open to it, to be open to learning. Oh, I have a little background noise. I apologize for that. Is to learn from things that happen, and also never let anything get to us. By the way, that's important. Kind of take a breath, know that everything is going to work out, and follow you. Be your best fan, and just follow your path, and you never know what will come up. So it's been a lot of fun. I hope you've enjoyed this chat as much as I'm going to close with my mug. Once again, I started at the beginning for those of you who didn't say it, which says, I am a nutritionist. What's your superpower? We all have superpowers. We all have different paths. Follow it. And and I hope to see you at Fancy. Oh, and I'm supposed to close with Keri Gans, my name, on Instagram, on Twitter. Facebook, it's Keri Gans NY. My website is Keri Gans NY. Join the Keri Report, and have a great day, everyone. Thanks.